In the heart of Boston's bustling North End, a giant steel tank loomed over the neighborhood. Towering 50 feet high, it held over 2 million gallons of thick, dark molasses for the Purity Distilling Company. To the children playing in the streets below, it was just another part of the city skyline. January 15, 1919, was unseasonably warm. A strange thaw had settled over the city. Young Leo, playing stickball in the street, thought he heard a low groan from the giant tank, a deep rumbling like a sleeping giant turning in its slumber. For months, residents had heard such noises, the groans and creaks of stressed metal. Shortly after noon, the groaning stopped. It was replaced by a sound like a machine gun as the steel rivets shot out from the tank's seams. Then, an explosive roar tore through the north end. The ground shook violently. The giant tank had burst. A colossal wave of molasses, 25 feet high, erupted from the ruptured tank. It moved with terrifying speed, a dark, sticky tsunami crashing through the streets at 35 miles per hour, swallowing everything in its path. Brick buildings were crushed as if they were made of paper. The sheer force of the wave buckled the steel supports of the elevated railway, tearing a train from its tracks. Frank, a worker on his lunch break, was thrown against a wall by the initial blast of air before the sticky tide hit. People and horses were swept up in the viscous flood. The thick, suffocating molasses made escape nearly impossible. Cries for help were muffled by the sticky morass that filled the streets, pulling victims under. The initial terror of the wave gave way to a new horror. As the winter air hit the molasses, it began to thicken and cool, creating a deadly trap. It was like quicksand, holding victims fast and making every movement an exhausting struggle. The first to respond were the ones who survived the initial wave. Police, firefighters, and sailors from a nearby training ship rushed into the chaos. They faced a nightmare landscape, a sticky, brown world where every step was a struggle. Frank, covered in the sweet-smelling ooze, joined the frantic rescue. He and another man worked together, their hands slipping on the sticky coating, to pull a woman from the deepening pool of molasses that had once been a street. As survivors were pulled from the wreckage, they were rushed to makeshift aid stations. Nurse Eleanor and her colleagues worked tirelessly, cleaning the sticky molasses from airways and treating gruesome injuries caused by the debris carried in the wave. The nearby Copp's Hill Terrace was transformed into a makeshift hospital. Dozens of injured people, covered in the dark, sticky goo, lay on cots and blankets. Nurse Eleanor moved from one to the next, her face a mask of concentration as she and her colleagues fought to save lives amidst the overwhelming chaos. As the molasses slowly settled, the true scale of the devastation was revealed. The North End was a wasteland of collapsed buildings, dead horses, and wreckage, all coated in a thick brown shell that began to harden in the cooling air. The cleanup was a monumental task. For weeks, crews used salt water from fireboats to wash the molasses into the harbor, turning the water brown. Sand was used to absorb the rest, but the sweet, sickly smell lingered over Boston for decades. The city's spirit, though battered, was not broken. Ordinary citizens came out with shovels and buckets, working alongside firefighters and city workers. They formed lines to pass debris, their faces smudged with grime and molasses, united in their determination to reclaim their neighborhood. The search for the missing continued for days. Rescuers waded through the knee-deep goo, listening for cries and probing the depths with long poles. 21 people would ultimately lose their lives, and over 150 were injured. In the wake of the tragedy, questions were asked. How could this happen? The investigation revealed the tank was poorly constructed and hastily built, its steel too thin to hold the immense weight of the molasses. The unseasonably warm weather caused the fermenting molasses to expand, putting the final, fatal pressure on the flawed tank. The tragedy sparked one of Massachusetts' first class action lawsuits. For years, lawyers for the victims fought against the powerful U.S. Industrial Alcohol Company. They presented evidence of the faulty construction and the company's knowledge of the leaks, demanding justice for those who had lost everything. The city mourned its dead. A solemn funeral procession moved through the cleaned streets, a stark contrast to the chaos of just weeks before. The names of the 21 victims were read aloud, a heartbreaking roll call of men, women, and children whose lives were cut short by the unlikely disaster. The Great Molasses Flood became a strange footnote in history. But for the people of the North End, it was a terrifying disaster born of corporate negligence. It led to new laws and regulations for construction projects across the country. For years after, on hot summer days, some Bostonians claimed they could still smell the faint, sweet scent of molasses in the North End, a ghostly reminder of the day a sticky brown river brought death and destruction to their city.